All right. We are back. I am Jack. This is the Jack Murphy Live Show, Jack Murphy Live Podcast, getting back at you here in the month of September 2022. We got a whole bunch of guests lined up for the fall, and I'm really excited about all of them. But today, I'm really excited to talk to this guy. The guy I'm about ready to talk to, Mr. Joshua Lisec. He's definitely one of the best copywriters in the world, one of the best ghostwriters in the world, king of the talent stack, hypnotist, an interesting fellow, a high value follow on Twitter. Have you ever wondered how to be more inspirational or persuasive in your writing? How to get people to do things that you know they even want to do in the first place, even though they might be hesitant? You want to unlock your business, make some more money, create freedom for yourself, the life you've always wanted to live. There's a way. Being more persuasive. It applies in everything. We're going to talk about that. Persuasion, hypnosis, copywriting. His experiences writing for people that you may or may not know already. A-listers. The ethics, copywriting and persuasion. All kinds of good stuff. I'm very excited to have the one and only Joshua Lisec. Josh.
Hey, Jack. Stoked to be here today.
Yeah, man. It is really good to have you here, dude. Like, I've been watching you lately on Twitter, and you're just going bonkers, man. The amount of output you're putting out, the response that you're getting, feedback you're getting from the universe seems to be really high. Seems to be really good. How are you feeling about things lately?
It's going well. The sort of shenanigans I find myself up to are exactly where I want to be, where I'm able to blend my own interests that also happen to overlap with what gets people results, specifically studying the subconscious mind and its workings and how that factors into the most effective persuasive writing that you can possibly muster. And I gave my first in-person speech yesterday, which I haven't done that in 4 years. I've been kind of a work from home, staying here in my digital dojo, as you can see behind me here, for the last 4 years. So it was good to get out and see that there was a standing room only event, and there's people packing the room outside the hall where I'm giving the speech.
No kidding.
There's so much excitement and interest.
How did that come about? What's it like translating the online world and online, speaking and business and creating a social media following, having all that sort of stuff happen out there in the ether, but then translating it into real life? What was that like?
Yes. So I have a program that I teach called The Best Way to Say It, which is effectively how to write anything from scratch and it'd be the best version of what you needed to say, from short form content to long form content. And the number one feedback that I get from that is, wow, this actually works because you don't spend time lecturing. You spend like 20 minutes lecturing about the philosophy and the models of persuasion, and then the rest of it is demonstration. There's about 4.5 hours of me actually working, screen sharing, showing real projects. And so I simply got up there, had my whiteboard, and I said, okay, I need a volunteer. And we went through the exercise after about 15 minutes of the lecture of the theory, the models of persuasion, and then somebody's example, and I went through it, walked through it live with a whiteboard. So it's, instead of a screen, it's a whiteboard. One of the most important lessons that I learned from a client was early on in my ghostwriting career. And this particular client said, Joshua, the most important lessons in life are caught, they're not taught. You can't tell someone what they need to know. You can't tell someone the process. You must demonstrate it, and then they will catch what they need to fill in their open learning gaps, the missing pieces that they had. And so I'll spend 2.5 hours, for example, and the best way to say it, I'm working on a chapter for Ed Lattimore's book. And I spend 2.5 hours on one chapter explaining what I'm doing and why I'm doing it there in real time. And so people can just skip everything else they've ever learned about copywriting, skip the model, skip the lessons, skip the lectures, and just watch someone work, look over the shoulder, so to speak. And that's how I prefer to teach. That's how I prefer to work. And it's a lot of fun doing it that way, and then explaining why you're doing what you're doing, as opposed to, hey, here's a slideshow with some models and some lectures.
Right. And it was pretty well received in person, live like that, on the whiteboard.
Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully you get some new business out of that. You're talking about unlocking, people's learning gaps and filling things in. I mean, persuasion is a lot about that in and of itself too, right? It's sort of guiding people down a path they may or may not know that they're on, or that they want to go on. There's a lot of motion. There's a lot of moving people in a certain direction. And if you, as long as you know some of the basics, which maybe we'll get into them or not, but I mean the basics is like problem, agitation, solution, right? Like that's absolute basis. And I'm jumping into like one of the main questions I wanted to talk to before we even did background, but it's really on my mind about agitation. It feels like this whole world is filled with agitation. It feels like watching folks on social media, watching the media itself, watching people who are having huge success. A lot of it has to do with agitation. Is that real? Are we being agitated? Is persuasion necessarily predicated upon agitation? Agitation is not a positive word, right? It takes a problem and then makes you feel worse about it, right? Or even more scared about it, right? Like, you're fat today and tomorrow you could be even fatter and then you might die. Right? There's your problem and there's some agitation. With the proliferation of the understanding of copywriting and social media, people really capitalizing on it, are we more agitated than ever before? Is there agitation without solution happening all over the place? Personally,
Yes,
I'm
everywhere we
watching.
look,
Yeah, go for it.
yeah, everywhere we look, we do see, as you've said, agitation, be it in politics or in entertainment. What we see is the personification amongst the masses of that meme with a little character with a stick poking something.
Hmm.
For example, you'll see Raytheon and Boeing over logos over top of the little character with a stick pointing at the United States. Come on, do a war. That sort of stick poking, agitating. We see that everywhere. Politics and entertainment and media. It's everything is meant to agitate, to get a response. And the reason why is the typical person's information consumption habits. I joked yesterday during the session that I gave that your content must contain ungoogleable information, meaning it must be new, it must be fresh, it must be exciting, it must be even controversial. It must invite both hate and love. Both, oh, I want to share this, and also I have to share this so people know the truth about how horrible these people are. Right? So it must do something like that. But it also must stop people who are in the following scenario. And if you can get someone to pay attention to you in the following scenario, you can get them to pay attention in any situation. Many people, upon exiting their, let's say, stall or after using the toilet, they will do what? They'll pull out their phone and they will wash one hand at a time while also continuing to scroll their inbox or their social media. So this is what is literally happening. Someone is, put soap on one hand and they're washing their one hand and they got their phone up and they're kind of like scrolling through it, or maybe they put it down over there and they're washing both hands looking at it. If you can make the person forget that they were washing their hands, make them forget that, wait, did they put soap on or not? Because of how exciting or perhaps how agitating your content is, then you win. You win. One of the most important aspects of persuasion, be it subconscious persuasion like hypnosis, which is what all hypnosis is subconscious persuasion, speaking to the subconscious mind to change root beliefs, therefore behaviors, and therefore have real life consequences from health to wealth even. But coming back to the content point, if your content isn't read, it's not going to be persuasive. If people are not going to actually be able to focus on reading your book, they're not going to be able to absorb your ideas and then take action. Like, oh, I need to hire this author to help me out with this. So agitation has, in fact, become essential, despite the fact that it has negative connotations. We want to more so think of it as, rather than agitating, think of it as curiosity inducing. Curiosity inducing. What's going to make someone stop, forget that they've washed their hands or they haven't washed their hands, or whether or not they put soap on, and then actually stare at their phone and say, well, I need to pay attention to this. I just got stop doom scrolling my feed here. If you can get them there, you've got them. Now, problem, agitation, solution that you brought up, this kind of formula or this flow for content is quite popular, and more people are knowing about it as more and more people are realizing, if I can't write online, if I can't copyright, I'm doomed. That seems to be the awakening that most people are having, that writing online is the most important skill a single person can have. Any single person can have, regardless of what their career is or what their background is. If you can write in such a way that you compel people to read it and then take action, you win the internet. You also win reality itself. Communication, effective communication, number one most important talent for your talent stack. Now, coming back to problem, agitation, solution, where this becomes ethical is when you're telling the truth. When you're describing the problem with accuracy, so that someone goes, oh shoot, that's about me. He's describing me. She's describing me. That's me. And then when you agitate, you bring to mind what they already deep down know to be true versus exaggerating, which tends to be why public figures, verified influencers, and some journalists will use adverbs. They use adverbs to agitate. They will lie with the adverbs. For example, there was a character over on MSNBC, I think, he said, it's deeply, deeply wrong. Oh, he's got two bad verbs there. He really wants to agitate how bad this is, how awful this is. So he's using bad verbs to try to manipulate people's emotions to get them to like and comment and share and so on and so forth. And vote for his preferred candidate next time, of course. So the agitation can be unethical when it's done to just, come on, do something, where you've got the stick and you're poking the other character inside the meme, as opposed to, oh, that's a truth. That's a truth. Wow, he's right about that. She's right about that. It is that bad. It is that bad. The agitation becomes ethical when you are surfacing consequences that are important to be aware of. When you demonstrate the cost of inaction, that the greatest risk is not trying something new, purchasing something even. The greatest risk is submitting to the status quo and writing that out. That is the greatest problem. And so what ethical agitation is demonstrating the cost of inaction, truly. And then after that, of course, comes a solution in which your solution, be it a product, be it a service, be it an idea, be it a request to share this content on social media, it must obviously flow from both the problem being demonstrated and then the agitation that was compounding the seriousness, the severity of the problem. And so this could all be done with integrity. This can all be done with facts. In fact, it is difficult to hypnotize someone when you are not telling the truth, because the patient or the client, their mind can check out and say, oh yeah, this person's full of crap. And then the hypnotist has lost rapport. They must get into rapport. So the most effective communicators, the unethical ones, know how to make it seem as if they're telling the truth by appealing to what someone wishes were true, what they want to believe, as opposed to what is. And the most effective ethical persuaders will speak to the reality that their, let's say, intended audience is experiencing. I know we're speaking a little hypothetically here with these things, but it is important to understand at the highest level of effective communication what is happening. Is that just because someone is doing well as a writer, as a copywriter, as a communicator, as a public figure, does not mean that they're telling the truth. It also does not mean that they're lying. It also doesn't mean that their victims believe that they have been lied to. Perhaps they have been effectively gaslit, which a lot of coaches do, I found, in business coaching, life coaching, is they are effectively able to gaslight their students or clients who have not gotten results. So they'll say, oh, well, it was your fault you didn't get the results. You didn't want it bad enough. I can't want it more than you do. This is a big issue I take with the coaching space overall, is the lack of accountability. If it's your fault, well, you just didn't try hard enough. Try harder next time. You didn't get the results. You didn't want it bad enough. And then, of course, the people come to believe them because the alternative, that they were deceived and that they've been manipulated, is difficult to stomach. So there's many rocks that have overturned in the I feel like as we overturn these stones of reality across industries, little potential bug ideas are scattering about as we turn over these rocks.
Yeah, you think people would rather admit that they didn't do or believe that they didn't do the work, quote unquote, versus that they made a bad purchasing decision?
Yes, which is more difficult, that I made the wrong decision and now I have to reverse that. That's difficult to do. Or they're right, I should just try harder. So when you hear people say should and just, those are tells for someone who has been gaslit. And of course, gaslighting, the actual definition is you have come to believe your, let's say, manipulator's version of the story is real and that yours is false, and that you must adopt their belief system, and it's you who are crazy. Oh no, it couldn't possibly be that the coach was wrong, or that the person I purchased this from is wrong. It couldn't be that, because I trust them so much. Look at all the success stories that they have. Look at the survivorship bias I'm refusing to see here.
Right. And it also plays along with people's desire to be consistent in their decision making as well too, right? It's one of those fundamental pathways that get utilized in copywriting. Cialdini's Persuasion's really good book at laying out some of these reciprocity, et cetera, and consistency and a number of others. I, a lot of things have to line up in order for using these tools to be ethical. I mean, it's not that hard if you're like an ethical person with a valuable product, right? But there's a lot of people who maybe not have a great product or are willing to bend things a little bit. And I just see it out there so frequently. Is there anybody that stands out to you in the world space today that is unethically using persuasion and persuasive tools?
Yes, and there's one type of person that I will not ever ghostwrite for. More accurately, one type of person I would never ghostwrite for again.
Ooh.
People who follow my Twitter regularly will know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about awfuls. Awfuls. The acronym AWFL. The affluent white female liberal. The affluent white female liberal is the type of person to say, oh, because you've been so deeply, deeply affected, uniquely. If you're a certain demographic, you get a 15% discount. You get a 20% discount. You get 25% discount off of our services. Now, if you're the wrong demographic, there's no discount for you. This is that type of person that we're talking about. Quick story. It was, I believe it was March or April of 2020, at the time when many people were having their contracts suspended with businesses, with clients of theirs, because the business would just simply shrug and say, our business was shut down by the state. We can't pay anyone. We can't even sell our product despite the fact that we have customers. And there was a particular awful I was ghostwriting for at that time. And I'd already submitted everything, and of course it was wonderful. And this particular individual emails me, and it's like a CC, so they're emailing multiple contractors of theirs, multiple vendors. And the email reads something along the lines of this: Jack, this awful says to us, due to the uncertainty of this epidemic and its economic consequences, we are suspending all payment to contractors effective immediately. Of course, that's not legal to do, because each of us had contracts. We had submitted the deliverables. You pay us, right? There's even clauses. There's a particular clause in the contract that even says that yes, we can pause this contract in the event of a military or civil, let's say, issue that comes up. But the one it does not negate the need to pay. So this is what I learned about awfuls. They like to virtue signal in public by saying, hey, if you're a certain demographic, you get 15% off of our services, for example. They like to virtue signal in public to, let's say, make up for their lack of virtue in private. And it's not just awfuls who do this. Many, many types of people do it. But I will never again write for awfuls.
Yeah, I can see why for that, and a number of different reasons. The problem agitation solution thing is something that taps into who we are as people. Like, we've evolved. There's in social communities, and there are certain triggers and pathways in our observation response sort of process that have led us to like a higher level of evolution and a higher utility for everybody, because working together in community makes sense. Somebody gives you something, you want to give them something back. You're more likely to do that, which is the basis for, here, have my free PDF, and then, and all my free content, and then I'll end up hitting you up for a sale. It's all driving on that. But I wonder if this fear-based sales cycle, is there anything that's comparable? And you may not characterize it as fear. I think perhaps what I'm doing is distilling what I see out there on these influencers who use fear to build their followings, right? And I've been a perpetrator of this in the past. I mean, I used to go out at the riots at night, Antifa. I'm covering it to like document it. But there was a part of me, and I admitted this before, that wanted something bad to happen, right? Like, oh man, I went out to cover these riots and nothing bad happened. And I was like, darn, right? That's crazy. Like, I shouldn't be wanting something bad to happen so that we can transmit fear and get people riled up and get them to share things and then have your influence grow. And I've been trying to actually not go that route and to share positive stories and to demonstrate positive behavior out there. And then I see people I know that are just hammering the fear, hammering the fear. In 5 years, you're not even gonna be able to turn your car on if you said the wrong thing on Twitter. I mean, is that a possibility? Is it a likelihood? Like, I don't know. And I'm getting a little tired of it. Is there another pathway that's comparably as effective in spreading, getting people to share, getting people to spread the word, getting people motivated? Are people more motivated by fear or more motivated by positive examples in their life? How does this translate into your work? And how does it translate into reality and society, and whether all of this is good for us or not?
All journalism is based on manipulation. And every person in the internet age who has a smartphone and a social media account is a neo-journalist. And that which speaks to humans at a biological level, survival instincts, and putting those survival instincts at risk, is going to result in a knee-jerk reaction, a share, a retweet, a quote tweet, a you got to see this, oh, it could get really bad. So fear is a quick way to get attention on your material. And this is why mainstream outlets, even the news headlines, they'll have words like could. Trump could have sold our nuclear secrets to Russia. Is there any evidence of that having taken place? Not that's been presented publicly at this time, but it's the could, it's the fear. It's I knew it. I knew it. I knew he was up to something. I knew he was up to no good. So then we feel, I knew it, right? And all that was used was the word could. If you do a search on any major news website, just search the word could. Search adverbs as well, badverbs as I call them, and you will see this pseudo news of these things that could happen. And you see it also with both verified and unverified influencers and public figures, and even just people with a following for a political stance. Is they'll talk about how bad it could get. And one thing that they will do is they will appeal to the slippery slope fallacy to point out how far we've already come. Look how far down the slope of debauchery and heathenism we've already come. Look how far we've fallen already, and it's going to get so much worse. So they're able to kind of hindcast and say, now we can forecast based on how far we've already fallen, and look how bad it's going to be. It's the trend line. It reminds me of it's kind of a astrology for journalists. Or another way of putting it would be these people who stare at crypto charts and they'll say, oh, looks like the price is going to be up to this tomorrow. Look at this trend line. Really? So it's a forecast made upon a hindcast. And of course, the vast majority who are wrong, those tweets are never dug up. And the ones that are do tend to be dug up and go viral. For example, there is a particular account that made apparently countless predictions of the day that the Queen of the United Kingdom
Oh, no
was going to
kidding.
pass away. And the one tweet that was accurate went viral. And I believe the others, if I recall the story correctly, deleted tweets or were set to private tweets to hide the false predictions. And that way it looks like, what else did this person predict? Predicted like Bitcoin at 82,000, I think, and Ethereum at 56,000. I think this account also said. So guess what happens? People who believe crypto is going to go up need it to go up because they bought at the top and they've lost 80% or 60% or 50% of what they purchased. They're now going to share that. They're predisposed to believe those other predictions because it looks as if this one prediction about the Queen's fate came to pass. And this is a method used by influencers, used by public figures, used by authors. I may or may not have been guilty for perpetrating this on behalf of public figures I've ghostwritten for, because it works. It works. I try to shy away from things that irk me on an ethical level nowadays, because once you're manipulated by an awful once, it doesn't happen again. It doesn't happen again, and you're sensitive to manipulation going forwards.
Yeah, I can imagine. And having had worked with public figures, you see the public, product, you participate in it, and you also have those private one-on-one interviews, and you get them to spill their guts and whatnot, and you're really trying to translate what they've got in their head into something that somebody's going to be persuaded by and is going to buy. But in doing that, have you like discovered anything about public figures? Are most of them full of shit? I mean, you kind of get that. Sometimes you get that gist. I have not felt full of shit, but I have felt myself leaning into the things that I know which will generate views rather than maybe all the things that I want to talk about all the time. And I'm trying to eradicate that from my work, right? I'm trying to be completely consistent, but if I'm not spreading fear all the time, maybe it won't have as many shares. But what have you figured out in working with public figures about them and their consistency with reality? Are they lying?
The vast majority of the time, they're white lies. And I'll explain what I mean by the white lies in a moment. So first, we will talk about the truth, the helpful truth. So that's how we're going to define it. So what is the helpful truth? I tell every author that I ghostwrite for, and I think I'm working on my 75th, 76th, and 77th books right now. So maybe I'll hit 100 before I'm 33, 34, something like that. In any case, back to the advice that I give authors. I say, imagine a Venn diagram. Two simple circles. In one circle is all the topics you could include in your book. The stories, the lessons, the insights, the experiences, the opinions. That's in one circle. And in the circle next to it is what readers are willing to pay $25 for, $30 for, $5 for the ebook. What's in this category? And then where is that overlap? That little overlap between those two circles. That is what goes in your book. And I have unique methodologies to figure out what is in both of those circles and where that overlap exactly is. But it is a helpful truth. It is the useful truth to include only those things that are in the overlap in the book. Now, what would be unhelpful and perhaps false is to write about things you know nothing about just because, well, people want to pay for it, so I'm going to give it to them. That, I believe, would be unethical because now you have to position yourself as being an expert on things you know nothing about. People who tend to experience imposter syndrome are the real deal. If someone is not experiencing imposter syndrome, that is a tell for a schmuck, for a scammer, for Doc McFarley's Wonder Medicine in 1880 rolling through town. Okay, there's no imposter syndrome there. It's the person who, let's say, is a hypnotherapist who has effectively brought someone's cancer in stage 4 cancer into remission through hypnosis alone and still charges $200 for 3 sessions. That's the person who has imposter syndrome. And they feel bad. And oftentimes it's the people who are towards the bottom of an industry in terms of their pricing, in terms of their income, who are the best. The absolute best. I see this over and over and over. But there's always a moment when those people get fed up with the lies, the nonsense, and the BS of people at the very top of the industry who are charging 10 or 100 times they have millions of reach, millions of people they can reach every single month. And there's this little person who has 10 new clients a month, and they have a happy little life. But one day they get fed up and they say, I'm sick of people at the top lying to everyone and charging them 1,000 times more than I'm charging. I need to become famous now. And it's not even for them. It's just because of I need to compete with the liar at the top. And one of the things that the liars at the top will often do, and I may or may not have empowered this in the past, is the white lie I talked about. And I'm saying white lie because it's not that they were telling falsehoods. It's that they were excluding different aspects of the truth. And it's because they believe they must. Look at every best-selling memoir, autobiography of a public figure. It follows the 3-act story structure, which comes, of course, from fictional storytelling, novels. Why do they do this? Because that 3-act story structure resonates across time, across people, across races, across cultures and languages, and even levels of technology of a good story. The hero must encounter a problem bigger than the hero. The hero must have a mentor or guide along the way to show them the ropes. The hero must have an antagonist who's bigger, badder, stronger, and better than they are at all the things that matter except for one, integrity. And that's every good story. And so public figures who hire a ghostwriter to write their memoir are aware of this. And so it is the memoir ghostwriter's job to look at the 3-act story structure, the template, and then interview the author and look at, okay, what's the equivalent of the inciting incident in your life for this particular episode? Who would be the antagonist? And so we're mining the public figure's life for what fits in the template and eliminating everything else. Sometimes we'll even exaggerate a villain character because there is no real villain available, because most people's lives are terribly boring, particularly public figures, particularly the rich and famous. Their lives, by and large, are similar to everyone who's listening to this who is not rich and famous. It just so happens that their home is worth 100 times more. Everything else, by and large, is the same. The emotions that they have, the problems that they have, the arguments that they're having, the spats with their kids, except they're compounded by legal issues that the average person may not have. They're stressed about taxes, just like every person is, except their tax bill is in the 8 figures as opposed to $8,000, right? And so they get little about from being rich and famous that the average person doesn't. So there's a lot to not be envious of with public figures.
In the age of social media and personal branding, content creation, influencing, whatever, this industry is growing, and it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. So you're going to have more and more people creating content, putting out the value that they have learned through their life experience, and helping people solve problems. Whether it's entertain them, ameliorate their fear, or provide them a solution to an actual concrete problem that they have. But you just said everybody's lives are boring, and it's funny because you were comparing it to rich people to make normal folks not feel bad, right? In some ways, and in interviewing people for my book, Democrats of the Deplorable, I interviewed all kinds of people and a whole number of them. And the takeaway that I had actually from interviewing these people was that the takeaway that I had from interviewing these people was that everybody had a movie inside of them, that everybody had a movie inside of their life, that there was some story in their life that fit the model, first off, and would be relatable and inspirational to basically anybody who is a human. And in this age of content creation and personal branding and this and that, I think people need to tap into that. Would you agree that if you look at it with the right frame and ask enough questions, that there's a story, a unique story in almost everyone's life that has the problem, it has the, oh no, we're never going to make it, and it has the struggle, and then it has the victory? And I say this because I want people to feel inspired to actually tell their stories and not have that imposter syndrome.
Yes, yes. And interestingly enough, that tool of the 3-act story structure does become helpful for doing that. What we want to avoid is sensationalizing it to appeal to people's sense of voyeurism, perhaps, or of peeking at this exciting story where there's gossip and there's drama, and turning it into a tabloid, which most memoirs are, is wildly exaggerated. And of course, it's the adverbial version, it's the bad verb version of the person's story. But a 3-act story structure where there's not necessarily exaggeration, and you don't have to invent a villain or kind of assign your ex-mother-in-law to the villain role, for example. And there is actually a struggle or a real problem that was overcome. And you did have, in fact, the help of mentors and of guides. Remember we talked about at the beginning, if the problem, the agitation, the solution are true, and they pass the truth check, then you've got something compelling. And so we know that roughly 90% of people want to author a book. The two issues that they have are, well, I have to make up a bunch of stuff so people will want to read it. Or if they tell it like an autobiography, then it reads like a Wikipedia entry of their life story. Nobody wants to read that. And so there is a middle way, and that's the overlap that I talked about, which is which aspects of your story, of your life, are interesting to the most people who are willing to pay $25 for it, $30 for it. And this is why I advise people to steer clear of the autobiography category, the personal memoir category, and focus on a how-to kind of a book. Have a memoir mashup, I call it, where you are sharing episodes of your story that have the greatest resonance with the most people, and it's also illustrating something. It's illustrating a truth. It's demonstrating how to overcome a specific challenge. So rather than making it all about you, you answer the question, what's in it for me? Me being the tens or hundreds of thousands or even millions of people who can resonate with your story. And there's a lot of them out there. So if you think of your book not as I was born this year in this place to these parents, and telling it all, unless you're unless, let's say, you have 1 million searches for your name every single month, people don't care about that story. It also doesn't mean you have to go and make up a version of that story, which is the typical tabloidish public figure role. Is, well, we need a villain, so I don't like this person in my life, so we'll make them the villain. Just make sure we lawyer up so they don't come after us. is the method.
Aside from purchasing your courses, which are available on entrepreneurswordsmith.com, what would you advise to people who really want to get into this, the content creation game? Like, what have you learned? More about process than anything. What have you learned in terms of your systems and your approach to content creation and the mindset that you have to go into it? Using, I know on your website, and I know you sell very effective copywriting courses, how to write titles, how to do all kinds of stuff, the best way to say it. And it's all fantastic material. And I'll be honest, I have so many of your Twitter threads bookmarked that when I go to write an email or if I go to write something, I just go back, I find that one thread and I get that refresher course. And it really helps me put structure onto what I'm doing. But there's so much about it that's mindset. Like content mindset, your life mindset, the story that you have inside to tell people, or the mindset that you have something valuable to offer. How do you help shape people psychologically? What would you advise to people? Because I know a lot of people watching are interested in this. How would you advise somebody who's like beginning in the game and wants to be really good at it?
Yes. So I have gone something viral a few times, pillaring the buzzword mindset.
I understand.
It's a little ingest. I'll joke that mindset is what you talk about when you have no practical advice. And we see this often from accounts who talk about, it's all about mindset. Success is mindset. Getting free from addiction is mindset. It's all mindset. But then it's like, well, what does a mindset in action look like? A mindset in action looks like a model. Forget the mindset. That comes after the model. The mindset is the output, that's not the input. When we teach ourselves a new model, we learn a new model of reality or of doing a specific process, then the mindset in which we think in terms of that model comes about. And so let's talk about the best way to say it. I'm going to puke. The best way to say it, mindset. It's a model of reality, meaning it is how to think about writing anything, from that next blog post you have to write, to that email to a colleague you have to write, to that ebook you're thinking about creating as a free PDF on your website, to a pitch deck you have to write, or even to that 350-page, well-researched, 600 sources total book. And it's 4 simple steps. So we're going to give you all watching and listening here kind of a free preview of the best way to say it. There's 4 simple steps to it. This is the model that then becomes a mindset that you think in, and you no longer even need to reference the mindset because it's that unconscious competence. And the first piece, of course, is, what is the big idea you have to communicate in this email, this blog, this book? I say the big idea because I'm borrowing that, I'm repurposing that from the TED platform, TED and TEDx. Now I have a TEDx talk. It's been featured on the TED website. I help people get their TEDx talks, and I ghostwrite TEDx talks, and that's a lot of fun. They all have to have a big idea. Capital B, capital I, big idea. Now, fortunately, they give criteria for what is a big idea. When you apply to be a TED or TEDx speaker at any TEDx London or TEDx NYC or whatever, all of their application forms for would-be speakers have the very first same question, which is, what's your big idea worth sharing? Some version of that question they'll all ask. What do you mean by big idea? Well, it's something new and something fresh that is, hey, get a load of this. It's, did you hear about this? Wait, what? I want to know more about that. That's a component that it has. That's what the big idea is. Most people do not get a TEDx talk who apply for one because their big idea is, I want to tell my story about overcoming a cancer diagnosis. That's not a big idea. That's an anecdote. I want to share my advice on buying an electric car. That's not a big idea. This is how people fill out the TEDx Talks form, which most people who ought to give one don't get one. So the very first thing you need to think about is, what is the version of this content that has a big idea that people can remember for it? So, for example, my TEDx talk, the one big idea goes something like this. You have every skill you already need to create your dream job from scratch. It's something that makes you go, shoot, what's a dream job? Create my dream job, not get it from scratch. I have everything I need? BS. Prove it to me. And then they watch the TEDx talk, you see. That's the big idea being communicated in that. So that's the very first thing that you must have as your starting point is, what are you writing about? Most people just start writing. I need to write an email to this person. And then they vent, fix a typo, send. That is the default way most people write. Their books, they write their blogs, and it's all over the place, feels like a rant, and does not get the intended action. Instead, we think, what's the big idea? Maybe the big idea is you simply want to get a reply from someone in which they say yes, or no, or thanks, that's good. A deliverable accepted, if it's a client, for example. So what's the big idea that you want? Start there. After that, this is a step 2 of the best way to say it method. You simply brain dump. Brain dump everything that's in your head about that big idea. Given that this is the big idea for this article, this email, this ebook, or this full-length 375-page book, what all needs to be in here? Now, maybe you're brain dumping topics, subtopics. There's a story here that you want to include. There's 3 steps that have to be in here. You just brain dump, free write. This prevents writer's block from getting in the way. Most people skip the big idea and just start brain dumping, and they go all over the place, and they're not sure what's relevant. They're kind of like trying to create the internet as they search it, as the saying goes. Rather, we want to know what we have in mind already. So once you brain dump, eventually you'll get to the point where you think, I don't know what else to say. That's your cue that you're done. That's your cue that you're done. So we're going to lean into writer's block. We're going to obey the writer's block. Most people think they have to push past the writer's block moment. Nope, that's your cue. It's time to stop. And then you do step 3 of the best way to say it method, which is the restructure. Now you kind of zoom out to your content. You think like an analyst. You think at a higher level. Imagine you are now looking at a table of contents. That is everything that you brain dumped according to your big idea. What comes first? Well, usually what comes first is something that fulfills the promise of your clickbaity big idea. And if you did this right, your big idea should read like clickbait, which makes people go, oh, that I don't know if that's true, but I got to investigate to see if it is. So clickbait's ethical when you actually deliver on the bait that you've got people to click. That's when it's ethical. Otherwise, it's a click trap or a click trick, as the alternative terms go. But you're restructuring in the order that makes the most sense. And once you are now thinking analytically or thinking critically, you'll realize that you wrote step 3 first. That's not step 3. That goes at the end. And this phase is a lot of copying and pasting, or rather cutting and pasting. And you'll even see some things that don't go anywhere. You highlight all and you delete. And finally comes the refining, where you're writing the transitions. The 4th stage of the best way to say it is very simply writing transitions from one section that you've restructured to another, so that it's not step 1 is this. This concludes step 1. Step 2 is that. This concludes step 2. That's boring to read. That's Wikipedia. We need to create a sort of a flow that moves people gently, like a stream, like a boat in the stream. That must be what the reading experience is like, is they're just kind of flowing along, moving with it, not hitting rocks where the content just ends in that section and you start talking about something else. Great ghostwriting, in my experience, is all, I should say not all, I should say the majority of great ghostwriting is the 4th stage, the 4th step of the best way to say it method. It's refining. It's creating transitions between stories the author said, I want to talk about this somewhere. I want to talk about this somewhere else. Not a lot of detail, not a lot of direction, but that's why we get paid the biggest bucks there is for professional writers, is we can find those transitions between ideas and stories that seem to have nothing to do with one another, but the author says, I want these in my book. If the person doesn't know how to write those transitions, it's step 1 is this. That concludes step 1. Here is a story now. I finished the story. Now step 2. And this is why most books by either writers writing themselves, or even I'd say 99% of ghostwriters, read as if they have never heard of the best way to say it method, and they found the worst way to say it.
I have followed and settle for a long time. I get his emails every day. I get his emails every day for so long that I've noticed now he repeats the same emails almost 365 days later. I did not realize that at first. They're so well written. You think that it's fresh that day, but it's not. But anyway, yeah, they like line up in my inbox, and you see it was just there from last year, same subject and everything. But he's the king of that transition. Tell you a story, and then somehow there you don't even know how it's going to be, but he like transitions you into his offering in a way that's seamless, makes sense, and makes you want to buy the product. It's interesting to observe it in action, and then to hear you also talk about that high value add of the transitions. Guys, everything that Joshua just laid out, you can learn more. Go to entrepreneurswordsmith.com. Follow him on Twitter at Joshua Lisec on Twitter. There's elsewhere to find you, I'm sure. Podcasts all over the place. Just dump his name into Google and learn away. Hypnosis. We talked about it briefly pre-show. I remember watching you, talk about how you're going to get get licensed. You went through the process. You were very excited about it. You're proud of it. You got it. Now you're the only copywriter who's licensed, certified as a hypnotist in the world. This is a very particular and powerful skill stack that you have built, a talent stack that you have built, that old Scott Adams concept that he brought to all of us a few years ago. What, hypnosis, as you described it to me, is engaging with people's subconscious thoughts and creating. Why don't you just tell me? Because I have a follow-up question. For people that think hypnosis is going to be the watch going back and forth or making people cluck like a chicken, describe it briefly so that we can dig into what it's meant for your view on just reality and how we engage with the world, etc.
Yes. So hypnotism is subconscious persuasion. Stage hypnosis is more like magic tricks, like an illusionist or a mentalist, or, wow, I don't know how they did that. How are they able to do that? Just sorts of tricks with people. That's stage hypnosis. It's different from clinical hypnosis. And as you were saying, I pursued the hypnotist certification from the National Guild of Hypnotists, which is the oldest governing body in the world. And I also have the ghostwriter certification from California State University, which is the only master's degree level equivalent for ghostwriting in the world. So I've got both of those. So I was like, hey, I'm the only certified ghostwriter and hypnotist. Why would that make sense for someone like me? Because that means I can simply put, hypnotize your readers into action, which is a unique deliverable that, dare I say, no one else knows how to do. No one else knows how to do. More people don't study hypnosis because those who do throw themselves into hypnosis have the heart of a therapist. The outcomes, the results of hypnosis are so bizarre, they are unbelievable. So things like what seems as if they've cured stage 4 cancer, what seems as if someone has been healed of paralysis. What we're talking about are like medical miracles, almost. But to people who study hypnosis, who work in this environment, they know how to make the subconscious mind affect the person's reality. And of course, what you learn in hypnosis from a health and wellness and fitness perspective is that the subconscious mind exists throughout the body. It is wherever the nervous system is. And of course, the nervous system connects to all of our organs. Now, if you follow that rabbit hole deep enough, you'll realize you can make the body do anything you need to, if you have the skill to. So that said, it becomes useful when paired with ghostwriting, because then you can enter readers into a trance-like state, which is where you do the subconscious persuasion, using multisensory language. What I learned in the experience, and this bears out in reality, is that the subconscious mind ages along with our conscious mind until about age 5, and then it stops. So what does a 5-year-old comprehend about the world? That is the level at which you must write, in terms of the ideas you share using concrete language. I'm not saying you have to write to a 5-year-old. What I'm saying is write to what a 5-year-old understands. 5-year-olds have a concrete sensory understanding of the world. So if you're writing about sophisticated concepts, use visual metaphors, use concrete language, be descriptive rather than airy-fairy, and then and avoid corporate ease, as the term goes. A good example of this is, I will take you to new and greater levels of success. What's a level of success? It is impossible to visualize that. If you tell a 5-year-old, we're going to take you to new levels of success, what's a level? Is that like a video game or computer game level? Like a new place where like we're literally going there? Really? Let's go. Come on. It doesn't work, does it? And so a hypnotist knows how to use concrete, tactile, visual, auditory language, that multisensory communication, to implant new beliefs. The new beliefs that the person has drive new behaviors after the hypnosis is complete. And then those new behaviors have new outcomes. And so when I'm ghostwriting a book, our objective is, as they're reading the material and as they enter into a multisensory trance-like state, we implant new beliefs. I like to call this red pill-like beliefs, meaning the beliefs that the author gives readers, the new beliefs, are such that they replace what the person knew to be true in an instant and forever. If you're not red pilling your readers about your industry, you're doing something wrong. They must go, I cannot look at this topic the same way again. That's how you know your hypnosis in print has worked. That's how you know it's worked. And then those new beliefs drive new behaviors. What are those behaviors? No guessing here. No, go figure it out. There's a book I threw across the room sitting on the floor in which the author talks about how to get 1 million followers on Instagram. And the section on joint ventures goes like this. The best way to get lots of followers quickly on Instagram is to team up with bigger accounts, and maybe also accounts that are on your level, maybe also some accounts are a little bit smaller, but you just reach out to them and you suggest a joint venture and you do something together and you'll get their followers. End of section. This is why most nonfiction books suck, even the bestsellers, in which the author hired a company to buy 8,000 copies of their book through 8,000 individual orders to kind of screw with the New York Times bestseller list and land their book on there despite not actually selling 8,000 real copies. This is what they do, you see. But that book is how most nonfiction is, be it a book or be it a blog or be it an email. It's vague. It's impossible for a 5-year-old to follow those steps. There were no steps there. There was no tutorial there. There were no components to a system. There were no Lego instructions. Imagine you were writing Lego instructions. Speaking of 5-year-olds, right? What does every Lego box say? Go to the store. 5+. See, they get this. They get this. Your advice as an author, as a social media personality, as an influencer, even as an employee or manager or leader, your advice must be structured like Lego instructions. Step by step with no step skipped. If you're putting on a different Lego piece on the bottom of the Lego, for example, what does the little Lego instructions show? It shows a little arrow to indicate that we're now turning it upside down. That is as specific, as tactile, and as gap filling, to reference what we talked about at the very beginning. Fill all of those gaps in the learning. Show all the pieces being put on. And now Lego instructions will have every single piece you're putting on the model or set or building or structure in this particular step. That is how granular your instructions must be as an author. Otherwise, your advice comes across like, you should just be happier. It's all about mindset. And you should just like love yourself, like authentically, like literally, just be you. Mindset. This, of course, is women's self-help books. It's structured that way. And not just women's, but men's as well. So you can be vastly different by thinking like a hypnotist or writing like a hypnotist. Write step by step with no step skipped. What does it look like? How does it sound? How does it feel? Does it taste bitter, or does it taste the joys of success? See? Multisensory communication once you've got them in that trance. And every time we read, Jack, we're entering a trance.
And so entering the trance is part of what I wanted to talk to you about next. And you said it, you kind of headed me off the path there. That every time we read, we're entering into a trance, right? You're actually literally blocking everything else out in the whole world, right? In order to focus your attention on one thing, and you're allowing an author from the past in time, right, to implant thoughts and ideas into your head. And I was going to ask you to be a little bit more specific about, quote, how to induce people into this trance. I think you suggested and alluded to there, like, if you're writing fiction or even nonfiction, I guess you could talk about the way things smell, talk about the way how things sound, how things feel tactilely on your fingers, how things feel inside your body, in your soul, in your heart. What does your brain feel like? What does it look like around you? What are the emotions that you're experiencing? Am I on the right path here? And how do you do that without sounding like you're like trying to check boxes to be like, oh, all five senses right there. Yep. And some emotion. Okay, good. Next.
The way to do that is through practice, right? Because you'll find out what works best for your audience, what works best for you as a writer, because it does have different applications in different genres. Let's now compare if you're writing a nonfiction piece, be it a book or be it a blog or an email, or you're writing fiction or a fictionalized life story, or you're simply telling a story to your audience. The wrong way to do that is to take the granular advice, meaning when you're writing nonfiction, do not skip the steps. Get granular. How does the person know they're doing it right? This is what annoyed me when I was a kid trying to learn golf from books. And there would be a picture from 10 feet away. Hold the club like this. Step 2, swing the club back, and it showed the club at the top of the backswing. Well, I can't see where the hands are positioned and the fingers, and it will say, turn clockwise. Turn what clockwise? And it just shows the top of the backswing and it shows the bottom. This is now most advice makes this mistake now, and I think it is also because the people realizing that they do not have to be great teachers to build great businesses, or at least have a great living. They just have to convince people that they're great teachers. Marketing is a different skill than the talent that it is that you're marketing. And I mentioned earlier that you'll find the people who are most skilled are often at the bottom in terms of what they're charging. They're the bottom 20%, even if they're, let's say, by far the top 20% in terms of services, because the people spend all their time and money on marketing, not acquiring this skill. So that's something to keep in mind as you notice influencers and public figures in any space, and why they're at the top and why they're so well known and why they're on all the podcasts, for example. But coming back to fiction versus nonfiction, often storytellers, whether it's in an email to your list, or you're sharing an anecdote at work, or you are giving a speech, the mistake to make is to get so granular you are prohibiting the audience's imagination from working. So open a novel and notice what's not talked about. What's not talked about. The author does not, a good novel, so not talking about something that sold 10 copies with a cover that was made in Microsoft Paint. $5 went into the funding of this project. I'm talking about authors that have hired a team of 9 ghostwriters to produce them 90 books a year. That type of an author. And you will notice, do they describe the color of every item of clothing that they're wearing? No. Do they describe how the character smells? No, not necessarily. Do they describe what the character just ate and how it tasted? No. No. The induction of the trance-like state is the story begins. Here's this person doing this thing. You are generating a simulation in the person's head. This is what all trances are, is simulation. So the hypnotist creates a simulation that the person's subconscious mind cannot tell as distinct from reality itself. And so to the hypnotist's client, the simulation is as true as the reality itself. And so what hypnotists do is they will tell a story inside of the trance-like state that the patient or that the client is in which the patient is the hero who overcomes their challenge, is able to do what they're not able to do before. And they come out of that state as if it has just happened in reality, according to the subconscious mind, where the root of all beliefs, behaviors, routines, habits, and desires, and dare I say fetishes, are. This is interesting that you can change someone's sexual preferences and fetishes, and kinks even, in the state of hypnosis. There's I have in front of me the book on how to do that, by the way. It's a red book, because you're reading it. Okay, of course it would be. Of course it would be red. You know it would be red. But we don't want to prevent the person's subconscious mind from imagining the story. And this is why people tend to enjoy the book more than the movie, is because the book did not give every single visual detail like a movie does. And so the person will say, that's not what the character's supposed to look like. Meaning, that's not how I imagined the character in my head. So we want to give multisensory experiences, talking about what it looks like, how it feels, rather than just vague things like, you will up-level your success. Well, what will happen? We don't have to get down to every single multisensory detail of every aspect of this. Just tell us what happens. If to use that golf metaphor again, don't skip from a 10-foot away picture of the hands holding the club, and then the next picture is step 2, swing the club back, step 3, hit the ball straight. This is most gurus and most experts and most authors' advice. It's in those 3 steps. Well, what happens at every stage of the way? What needs to be done? You don't have to talk about how the golf glove feels on your hand and how it smells. That's not relevant. What is relevant is what you're supposed to do and how you know you're doing it right, and how to adjust if you did not get the result. This is how to write good nonfiction, be it a book or be it a blog, with epic persuasion.
Interesting. Writing a good book is great, but not having an audience makes it sort of pointless, right? So how do you get, I mean, well, you can challenge me on that. Maybe it's a good idea to write a book even with no audience. But how do you get the audience? I saw a Twitter thread of yours recently talking about becoming the VIP of a VIC. Took me a minute to figure that out. Very important cause, I think, is what that means. So become the most important person on a very important cause, and take a stand, and become the avatar for a thing that people are feeling that's widespread, right? I mean, niche is fine and it's a good place to start, but if you can nail down something that applies to just about everybody, it's going to be terrific for you. You cited some examples. Maybe we could talk about those. But more to the point, really, for like the individual listening who's like, I want to be a content creator. I hate this word influencer, but like, I want to be a content creator. And side note, I've been reading a lot about how people are so sick and tired of quote influencers. People are tired of watching people who are rich off of just doing nothing and posting things on Instagram or TikTok. So I think there's a real craving for like real life people who have day jobs, people who do other things, people who have problems in their lives, to then become quote influential. So how do people like that, who aren't going to be a 10 model or aren't super rich or whatever, but how and is like a regular guy going to become influential or have an audience or just create that opportunity for themselves to give people to persuade?
So how does a normal person become influential? We'll return to that after we address the first point that you made in that transition, which was books and audiences. I've often said that if you write a book and no one knows you wrote a book, did you really write a book? Which is to say, in effect, no. If your book is ranked 4 millionth on Amazon's bestseller list, no one's down there, friend. No one is down there. I often tell people who reach out to me, Josh, I have this great book idea. And I say, but you don't have a great following, you don't have a great audience. That's not to say you do need 500,000 followers or 10,000 followers before you can write a book. What you need is something that happens after the book. So the sort of people that I ghostwrite books for are those who have a business or organization in which there's an obvious call to action for readers. So I mentioned earlier that I ghostwrite books that bring readers into a trance, and in that trance they have a belief change experience, which drives a new behavior. And one of those behaviors that we want is to further the bond they have with the author by engaging with them offline, or out of the book, I should say, off the page. And that may be subscribing to their website, getting their emails. It could be purchasing their course, which expands on the ideas with additional tools and materials. It could be something, hire the author outright. Perhaps they have a $5,000, $10,000 US retainer fee that makes sense for an organization, the CEO of which has read the author's book and says, we need to do this today, this is the right direction, this author can help us solve our problems. We just need them to come in here and apply everything to us, what's in the book, because it takes too long for us to figure out how to do that ourselves. And this is one of the best books, the best type of books that I've ever written is one which is the consulting Bible, or the professional services Bible, you might say, manual, maybe business operations manual, for a consultant, for an advisor, for someone who can reference their book, chapter, page, line even. Here's what you're going to do, and here's how you're going to do it. And then they can stay along and make sure the company, the organization is doing it right. This is how the author, with no audience at all or small audience, can become, I'm not going to say wealthy, but I'm going to say wealthier. And there are some people that I've ghostwritten for All they do is print a few copies of their book and then mail 10 copies a quarter to potential clients with an invitation to chat. Say, hey, complimentary copy. If you would like someone to implement everything in this book and help you get these results in your organization, here's my number. Easy. And that's how they fill up their slots. So it's not even about being famous. It's about being a household name in the right households, which may be three new clients a quarter. So that's really what we're going for. It's not necessarily fame. It's being beloved by the right people. Maybe that's three new people a quarter, or maybe it's 300,000 people on each platform and being verified on those platforms and having 30,000 searches for your name every single month on a search platform like Google. So that's really what it is that we want. But depending on what it is that you're going to sell to the people, because it would make sense that you do not want to do this for free because of the time and resources and money you invest. You want return on your time, quote unquote, becoming famous, or at least micro famous or well known and respected in a niche. But that's really what we want. It's not necessarily the number of followers. It's being known to the right people. And maybe you're considered the go-to authority in a niche with 5,000 companies that people outside the niche have never even heard of. And that's okay that no one knows who you are unless you're the CEOs and CMOs and CROs and COOs and CFOs of the companies in that industry that have multi-million-dollar budgets for services like yours. That is how to build an incredible living, and no one knows who you are. And that's okay. So really what you want to ask yourself is, who do I want to be known by? I like the ghostwriter's position because we don't have to be famous to gain the benefits of fame without the costs of fame.
Indeed. But I hear you on all of that. I was curious to dig in a little bit deeper into the very important cause thing. Like how could somebody talk me through choosing a very important cause and what it looks like to become the VIP of the VIC?
Yes. So there's a thread I did about how to become a very important person associated with a very important cause that already matters to people. And this is how to, you could say, the textbook definition of famous is that many people know who you are, if not most people know who you are. So one thing that turns us off to influencers is that it's all me, and they're paying to perhaps tens of thousands a month in ads to make sure everyone knows who they are, and it's very much a kind of a glory grab. Or look, the more people who know who I am, the more product I'm going to sell. Which in their mind is, okay, I just have to make everyone know who I am, and if it costs this much to manufacture and sell this product, I can spend this much on ads, assuming I can sell this many. It becomes a numbers game. In that respect, it's mathematical. There's nothing beyond the interest in becoming famous beyond what's my conversion rate, and can I, can I earn more than I spend in this business? But going back to the very important person, the sort of people listening to this who want to take this advice to heart are not going to be your airheads. They're not vacuous people. These are the real deal, the down-to-earth, salt-of-the-earth sort of people who live in Ohio. Let's say who live in Virginia. Not necessarily, though, not awfuls. So if any awfuls are listening, stop listening, because I don't want to give this advice to you.
It's probably my smallest demo anyway.
Excellent.
The white female liberal. Yeah.
Yes, we're safe then. Okay. So if you are not an affluent white female liberal, please take this advice. Please take this advice. So what you're going to do is you're not going to make it about you. You're going to make it about the thing that you care about, the very important cause. What cause do you care about? I have made social manipulation my cause, and I become known in that cause by talking about hashtag bad verbs. If you look at bad verbs, you will see that I am a quote unquote influencer, meaning every day, perhaps a dozen, 2 dozen people tag me on a news story in which the journalist is lying about what happened by using 2 or 3 adverbs in the tweet. Trump basically just, and then something he did not do. Biden essentially just something he did not do. So I want to become known as the person who helps people spot when public figures, the experts, authorities, be they political or be they social or be they religious or be they whatever, are trying to manipulate your feelings, trying to manipulate your family. If you can become, to quote Noah Ravoy, if you can become immune to manipulation, then evildoers lose power. Evildoers lose power when you become immune to manipulation. That's my very important cause, because all of us, frankly, if we're on social media, we're subject to an endless stream of manipulation. Endless stream of manipulation as you doom scroll down your feed. Everyone trying to guilt you into something or force you to share their beliefs, or let's say inject something into your body or put something on your face that perhaps is not going to be the most beneficial thing for you or for your family, but you're manipulated into it. And guess how they did it? With adverbs or bad verbs, as I say. So I'm becoming the person who's known for that, because that's a very important cause. And the more I talk about it, the more other people talk about it too. So I'm seeing people calling out adverbs the way I do who don't even follow me, because my followers have done it so much that now I'm like, I have like a influence level grandchildren, you might say.
Yeah.
I guess like a second order effect, you might say. So I'm already there. I'll just be continuing that, and my legend will spread, as the saying goes. So it's not that has to be about you. It's what's the cause that you care about the most. And I just pick a simple niche. Maybe you have a garden that you really like, and maybe you are concerned, let's say, about the elimination of native insect life that are helpful to plants, and the let's say infestation of non-native species that are committing a sort of species side, genocide, but like a species side sort of effect on local populations, and that's causing diseases to strike the garden. I have a pretty big backyard garden, so I experience this myself. So maybe your very important cause is around protecting the backyard garden experience for generations to come, allowing people to become more self-sufficient. But what's that one cause that is near and dear to your heart around your hobby of backyard gardening? You can become the backyard gardening bro, or whatever. You can become famous as that by being the person that they associate with this horrible thing that's happening. So what you need to do is, what's the horrible thing that's happening that you want to put a stop to? And if you had a small army of people behind you, you could in fact enact change, significant change. So what the change that I want is, I want people that when they see a blue check use an adverb, the immediate thing is, oh, this person's lying. Because the odds are they are, or they're manipulating me. They're trying to get me to believe something. So anytime you see an adverb, oh, the person's lying to me, you can check on everything they're saying. It's possible.
It is.
It's possible.
The very important cause that's been coming to me more and more is just identifying fear mongering, just identifying just outright fear mongering, things that are not likely to be true, ways that people are just trying to terrify you into spreading their message or buying their book or watching their show or whatever it is. I'm just tired of the fear mongering, and this is something that's become more and more evident to me, especially as I sort of cleanse myself of my own participation in the fear mongering. But there are definitely things to be worried about. But I'm just more focused on the positive solutions at this point. I know that you've done a lot of work with Scott Adams, and or at least some work, and I know that you guys engage quite often on social media. And I was just thinking about this with you before the show. People hate Scott Adams for some reason. I mean, some people hate him, some people love him. It's the perfect, right? Like that's like the perfect storm. People love him, people hate him. Why do you think people hate him? What was his very important cause? He's taken on a few of them. How does he manifest or represent a lot of these issues that we're talking about here? Because you guys have some things in common with the writing and the hypnosis. Give us a little case study on Scott.
Yes. So I had a conversation with him directly about this, and the issue is false memory. The issue is false memory, and I'm going to explain exactly what happened. And as far as I know, and as I'm publicly okay with sharing, what I'm about to share is what happened. So around the time that popular, viral, verified right-wing influencers, the COVID shenanigans, around the time that popular right-wing influencers were saying no mask, no jab, etc., etc., and we're saying if you disagree with us, you're one of the bad guys. You're one of the bad guys. That's a distillation of the message into a simple statement. A true binary. These are bad. People telling them you need them are bad people. Period. And that message was on everyone's newsfeed. The retweets, the quote tweets, the sharing, the confirmation. It was a sort of a group think effect. And this is what our side believes. We don't put that on. We don't put that in our bodies, and we eat red meat. Period. This is sort of the perspective of this tribe, you might say. And that binary created, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. So what happened? Scott was thinking out loud daily about his own decision on what to do and what not to do for himself. So, for example, he always opposed mandates for what you had to put on your face. But he did share a video in which someone had put one of these objects over their face and tried to blow out a candle. What happened? Could blow out the candle. Well, there's some sort of engineering happening here which prevents the maximum airflow from going out of the front of your face to the candle to blow it out. Okay, so there's the simple experiment anyone could do at home that demonstrates to themselves that this is something happening here. Probably not the most effective thing that's possibly there, but there's something there. So what happened? This is an audience, kind of the right social media right wing, you might say, right wing social media people in that tribe. He was not saying what everyone else who's a good guy was saying for those weeks and those months. That's not to say he was saying the opposite. But what happens for our 5-year-old subconscious mind? How does a 5-year-old think? My son is obsessed with good guys versus bad guys. Okay, this character has a red lightsaber, so they're a bad guy. The person has a green lightsaber, they're probably a good guy, right? This is his level of thinking. He's going on 5 years old, right? And that's the subconscious mind. And what's happening when we're in a trance-like state scrolling social media? It's our subconscious mind who's listening, who's watching, who's paying attention. We assign good guy, bad guy as we're in that trance-like state, and it's our subconscious who's tuned in, who's engaged in this. And the result was people remember Scott not saying what the good guys were saying. And so now, every time there is a left-wing cringe-lord who shares a terrible opinion, they say, oh, that's what Scott was saying. Because he was not on the good guys' side from that perspective. So it's a false memory that's been created. It's a false memory that's been created. And that's how it happened, was 5-year-olds are watching this. Oh, he's not talking like the good guy, so he must be a bad guy. And of course, these are good guys and bad guys because the good guys agree with us on other things that we have. So of course, we're going to believe what they're telling us because these are the good guys. It's obvious that they're the bad guys, right? But reality doesn't work that way. Reality does not conform to the beliefs, the opinions, and the experiences of a 5-year-old. And yet, that is what Scott has been subjected to. So that, in short, is precisely what happened. That is the correct interpretation of what happened. And sadly enough, it turns out that people will still have the false memory, retain to the false memory that they have of what Scott Adams was saying, because they perceive him as not being on the side, not parroting what the other right-wing influencers were saying at the time that he was thinking out loud, weighing pros and cons. And it turns out that it was his thinking that moved me to not get the thing. And we all know what I'm talking about by getting the thing. The logic that he had drove him to it, and it turned me away, and it made complete sense to me. And so now when people share what his opinion was, it's, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
The false memory.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing that your Twitter mentions are good for, it is revealing the number of 5-year-old subconsciouses running amok on Twitter. It's astonishing to me, and it's also one of the things that's a little disheartening, which is as you outlined here. It's if you run even if the perception and not reality is that you have said something outside of the accepted norms of the tribe, then you can become excommunicated in a blink and just create all kinds of hostility for you. And this is, when people say Twitter isn't real life, I mean, it's true and it's not true. And it affects the real world and it doesn't. And it's a playground for 5-year-olds in a way that reality isn't. So like it is and it isn't the real world. It's so much of the worst part of us amplified because, and you think it's partially because, or I'm putting words in your mouth here, because we are in a trance-like state. The scrolling is a trance. You're physically still. You're allowing things to like pass through your critical filters and straight into your guts and into the wiring that you've got. And we make all these snap decisions and we're coming at it. It's a very subconscious experience. It's because it's passive, right? And it's not entirely active for most consumers. I just, there's been so many benefits of social media for me that focusing on the negative seems like, I don't know, sour grapes or something. But I do wonder if in the long run it's going to be healthy for us all to spend so much time in a 5-year-old trance, basically.
Yeah, the 5-year-old trance becomes a problem, but it can also become a solution to other problems that we have. So we've
Right.
identified ways in which it is not helpful, is because it causes us to see the world, see reality through the logic of what a 5-year-old is capable of, whose brain's not yet developed. And of course, that 5-year-old is within all of us. When people talk about the inner child, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the 5-year-old subconscious mind that exists throughout your nervous system, and of course throughout your brain. And this becomes fascinating as you really want to go down to that rabbit hole, you might say.
Right.
But I mentioned that it can become helpful. It can become a solution to problems. One way you can do this is you can select accounts that regularly tweet or post or share content that you want to come to believe and behave as if it's true. For example, let's say you want to give up alcohol. What you do is you find accounts that talk daily they tweet daily about the consequences of alcohol abuse. They talk about what happens when alcohol enters your body, enters your bloodstream, enters your brain. Talk about how it destroys the gut bacteria, the microbiome, for example, and the disastrous feedback loop of the more you have, the more your body tells you that you need, despite the fact that you're well past the point of diminishing returns after the second or third alcoholic beverage. What you'll do is you follow those accounts, and then you set notifications on so that whenever they tweet something, whenever they share something, you get a notification on your phone. Oh, what's this notification? And you have an instant, maybe it's one sentence, it's just a couple of phrases about the problems associated with and the consequences of drinking alcohol. Oh, okay. You get 2 or 3 accounts. Like there's one called Alcohol Free Fathers, I think, at Alcohol Free Fathers. Get notifications daily. What's going to happen over time is your 5-year-old is going to begin to believe booze bad. That's it. And then what happens? Your subconscious exists throughout your body. The relationship between the body and the brain is everywhere. So what begins to happen is your body stops craving it, for example. I'm speaking from experience here on this on this point. And you hypnotize yourself into a new behavior, which is associated with the identity of, I'm a non-drinker, for example. And this is an excellent way to apply the knowledge that you now have of the 5-year-old subconscious within you, your inner child being an actual thing, and you can feed it daily messages, new beliefs that you want to become, that you want to adopt as true, and those have natural behaviors associated with them, which then become natural for you. And so I believe this, so I act this way. And it's because you intentionally hypnotized yourself through this information. And so now we've taken something that could otherwise be a polarizing, divisive weapon, and we've made it perhaps the most helpful thing that we can have, which is change the way we think about something and change our habits and change our beliefs and change our behaviors. A little hack for those who have an ear to hear.
That's good advice. That is good advice. And it's social media is just an amplification device of so many different things. It could be positive, could be negative. We did have a question. We have one question here from the chat. I'm going to change subjects here as we start to wrap up. Will artificial intelligence ever say it better than the man who wrote The Best Way to Say It?
As long as the entire body of work I've produced online, the AI is given access to, then yes. Because
right.
It'll simply be Joshua Lisec as the input, Joshua Lisec on God mode as the output.
Boom. Man, what a great answer. Nice work, man. I appreciate it. Joshua, I have loved talking with you. I have loved getting to know you over the time that we have over the last couple of years. It's been a pleasure to introduce you to people that I know and then see great things come from them as well. I think Dr. Ovadia is one of the great examples. I Fix Hearts. He wrote the book, Stay Off My Operating Table. And that has done, there we go, Stay Off My Operating Table. Terrific book, high value. It did everything for him that you promised it would. You translated what he had in his head into a digestible format. You inspired him to think bigger. You helped him build a business around his ideas. You helped him promote the book. He sold something like 10,000 copies or more, which is astonishing for a first-time writer. Maybe not for somebody who works with Joshua, but this is really true. That's more than almost any book on any mass publishing company or whatever is going to sell. He has really been someone that's followed your model to the T and had tremendous success and built his high ticket, product and business and backfilling it in with lower ticket items. So that's been great. I'm really glad that you were able to help him with that and a bunch of other people. And you're just spreading the gospel of this very important life skill. I tell people like accounting isn't everything. You should learn accounting for sure. Like learn it so you understand where the money is coming and going in your life and in your business. Copywriting even is one of those same essential skills. It's in everything. It's in everywhere you go, everything that you do. You want to be persuasive. Even people that need what you're selling, want what you're selling, must have what you're selling in a life or death situation need to be persuaded. So thank you. I think you're doing good work out there, and I know your products work, and I know everything that you're doing has that integrity that you were talking about. You're not just agitating us all up to sell us some bullshit that doesn't work. So thank you very much for that, Joshua. Any last words for people? Anything you want to get in that we didn't talk about? Want to send people somewhere? You want to persuade them into buying something? What do you think?
Well, I have a question back to you, which is
Okay.
from what you've seen in my material online, what has been the most helpful? What has been the most helpful tip or process that you've applied that you've seen for yourself?
The three pronged sort of hook, right? Something specific, something like what is it? Something useful, something concrete, and then like a general emotion, right? Like how to do better.
Oh yeah, the tweet from earlier today. I sent that out before. I shared that before. Yes.
Yeah, and I have it bookmarked. I mean, you've got things like how to write a good title, how to write a good hook, how to write chapter 1, which is basically a sales letter. And the sales letter can be in anything that you're trying to persuade anybody to do. I mean, whenever I'm writing an email or writing some new copy for something, I seriously do go to my bookmarked Joshua Lisec threads and go through them. Even in writing the copy for the description for this podcast, I even consulted your model. There's something about the power of threes. And it's really selling people on the benefit that they're going to get, the feeling they're going to have when they get that benefit. And it's not just making more money, it's changing your life, spending more time with your kids and having the freedom to be whatever you want, right? Like it's there it is. Same model. So I appreciate it. And I know a lot of other people do, and your reach only continues to grow, which is wonderful. Congratulations on all of your success. Almost 90 books, you said, right? Or like in your 70s now, over $1 million in sales last year. Congratulations. Joshua Lisec, where can people find you? What should they do next?
Yeah, the best place to get to embroil yourself in the controversy and fun is on Twitter at Joshua Lisec. I host all of my courses on a platform called Gumroad, Gum like bubblegum, and then road, that's in road. So if you simply search Joshua Lisec Gumroad, you'll find all of my courses. And I think it's also joshualisec.gumroad.com, I think, is where all of my, I think I have 10 or 11 courses. This week, I'm releasing the best way to copyright it, which is the most comprehensive hypno writing course that there is. And it also includes my very first hypnosis experience for people called Train Ride to Greatness. You just sit back, get on the train, and it'll take you where you want to go in life.
Wonderful. Joshua, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for listening. Share this, spread the word, link it, send it in an email, post a tweet about it, leave a comment, hit follow, subscribe, all those things. I don't think I've got anything else for you, Joshua. I could talk to you for a long time, but we're up on it. So thank you very much, sir. And until the next time, everybody.
It's been my pleasure, Jack. Thank you.
Wonderful. Bye-bye. Let's go.